Welcome to the Art of Love podcast. My name is Tamar, Gail, and I am here to guide you into deeper, more expansive love, freedom, and pleasure. A deep inner journey of self-discovery. Here, I will cover all types of topics pertaining to love, including self-love and self-care, relationships, Tantra, intimacy, sex, all the way to Christ Consciousness and Pachamama, just to name a few broad topics. My mission is to support you in being true to yourself, reconnecting the fragmented pieces and aspects of yourself so that you can find and use your own inner fire, Shakti power, and voice. It is time to break down the old systems that we have been taught to live by. I would love to see you align with your personal truth and nature instead of succumbing to others' views of how you should be, trying to fit inside of the box in order to be accepted, and instead standing in your power and loving all that you are, accessing a new way of being in the world. Today I have a conversation with Anita Bentata from Australia, who runs Activating Artemis, which is targeting relationship abuse for women. Anita, welcome to the Art of Love, and thank you for joining me today. Could you tell me and our audience what got you started in working with women in this profound way?
Now, you grew up in Australia, but with a mother who was French.
No, my mother's from Poland.
Your mother's from Poland.
My father is from Egypt.
Okay.
But in the African countries, there's a lot of French-speaking people from that being their first language. So yes, I had to speak. I wasn't allowed to speak English to my father, but my mother didn't speak French. She spoke English to us. She didn't teach us Polish.
Okay. So, and what brought you into wanting to get into the work that you do? Like, what was that kind of like driving force of this discovery?
Originally, I was working in accounts and bookkeeping, and I really loved it because I was quite introverted, and I had a lot of fear from my childhood, and I wasn't good socially. I had a lot of bullying through all my school years, and so I didn't have that confidence about being out in the world. But it was like, give me a calculator and I can make things balance. And I'm Libran, I like balance. So it was like, I can do this. And I just grew a lot of confidence doing accounts and bookkeeping, and it helped me start to get a bit more confident with being with other people. But it was safe because there wasn't too much interaction. But what happened then was I ended up getting caught in domestic violence, and I escaped after nearly 6 years with my 2 daughters, and I went into therapy to make sure that didn't ever happen again. That was my number one priority, going to therapy to prevent that again. And after a couple of years of therapy, I thought, I think I want to change careers and do this, because I knew when I got pregnant, I knew when I went back to work that I wanted to do something more with people, because I've been gradually getting a bit more confident in the world, but I didn't know what. And I thought it'll come to me, and it did through my own personal journey in therapy, one-on-one, and also in group therapy. It was such a profoundly healing and beautiful experience for me. It took me a few goes to find skilled therapists that could help me. But once I did, it was just a beautiful journey, and I thought, I want to do this with other people, and that's what led me into working in the field.
That's so amazing. Yeah, and there's a story that I think that so many people resonate with, and so many people resonate with being in some type of violence, abuse, or whether it's emotional, physical, psychological. There's just so many types of abuse that we can go through, and I think a lot of people can resonate with that, and then needing to find the healing and find a new way of being in the world. And I was just speaking to someone the other day about it, and it's like, and that's your medicine, that's your medicine. When you do your own healing, then that's your medicine. It's quite.
That's funny. That's never fallen before.
There you go.
It definitely is your medicine. It, like, I remember early in my career a colleague saying, "Oh, I learned so much from my clients," and I was thinking, I don't know about that. But then as time goes on, wow, do you? It's a real honour to journey with someone, but it helps you really stay mindful about your own journey.
Yeah.
What I loved about the psychotherapy training I did, it was that it was compulsory to go into your own therapy. So when I did my original training at the local university, it wasn't compulsory to have therapy, and but when I did further training to understand about trauma and abuse, then I think it should be compulsory for all therapists to have their own therapy, so they know the territory. They can be with anything and everything, and you can go so much deeper when you're comfortable to go in those territories for yourself.
Yes, definitely. And today, I know you work out of Melbourne, but do you have a practice in Melbourne? Do you work online? Do you?
Okay. So for 23 years I've been involved with one-on-one work, and last year I closed my private practice to one-on-one work, and because I run a domestic violence group for women, a large group in Melbourne, and there's no way I can see all of the women in the group. There's just too many women. And my heart would go out to all those women that either couldn't afford a therapist or couldn't find a therapist trained in trauma and abuse, or were getting re-traumatized by their therapist. And so I thought, well, how can I help these women? I'm a very practical person, and I like to think of, well, what can we do about this? Because I know from my own personal experience what it's like when everybody around you says this is terrible, but they don't do anything. That's, to me, been the hardest thing for me to come to terms with, about people in my life seeing things to some degree but not taking action. So I'm very much an action taker, and so I started thinking, what can I do? And so last year I started recording every tool that I use with my clients in videos, audios, and doing handouts, and I've created an online membership site. So it doesn't matter where a woman is in the world, she can access the best resources, and she can have support, and weekly, there's modules all the way through, and there's no contract, so you stay as long as you want to, but if you want to, you can have the full range of tools that I've used for myself and with my clients. And so I go through all the modules, a version of what I would do. Of course, it would fluctuate differently for the individual, but what I understand everybody can benefit from to build internally and self-development and socially, all of the skills and resources to live fully and to trust your instinct, your unconscious, and have the life you really want to live. And so that's online for all women, and there I'm live in the group to answer questions every week, as well as do webinars to expand things, so we get some live interaction as well as the videos and the audios. And, I've got, books on my site. I've got other products on my site as well. I'm an author and a speaker. So I speak at events. I do workshops too, as well as running my women's group.
I love that you have this membership site for women, because I know that there's so many women who really want to do it. They want help. They, like you said, they really want, and they can't afford it. And so finding a way to give to them, to allow everyone to have that opportunity to get out, to, to find their way is just, it's beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you. I didn't want that women's finances, or if they've got PTSD and they didn't want to travel, or they had mistrust even about going into the process, possibly because of past experiences. I wanted all women to be able to receive the same things. And so what I came up with, I still have to pay my bills, and because I'm a survivor myself, and I've had to also help my children through their own journey. They're adults now, and it definitely impacted their journey as well, and that's been an impact on me as well. So it's like, how do I look after myself as well as give to others? And so I thought, well, every woman that prioritises her well-being can make it more affordable for the next woman to prioritise her well-being. So the more women who join, the more affordable the program is. And so it's very, very affordable to join. And then in that joining phase, I'm hoping that because it's just launching in February, and I'm hoping that in that very low barrier of coming in, that enough women will go, oh, wow, this is awesome, tell other women, and there'll be so many women by the time that launch phase is done, it will be so affordable, it will be $4.50 a month. That's what I'm aiming for, so that it's easy. I'm all for easy and abundance.
That's fantastic. That's a great setup, because I mean, it's going to be very accessible to so many women worldwide, which is great. And you brought up a great point about your children, that it's not just you that's having to go through this, it's also the children. And I don't know if you mind touching a little bit on that.
Sure. Look, I've written about it in my book.
Okay,
and look, my daughters I don't give some details, of course.
Yes.
But I know my daughters, when I spoke to them about writing the book, even though they felt uncomfortable about it, they preferred me to write about it than not write about it, because they know what it was like to live through that, and they don't want other children or other women to go through that.
Exactly.
It's even reached the point when I was writing my book that one of my daughters was saying, did you put this incident? And she described a memory in the book. And I said, no, I didn't think you'd want that in the book. I was censoring some things. And she goes, no, put it in. So, that's been important for them too. And as young adults now, they come across it a lot through girlfriends.
Yes.
And so it's so visible when you're willing to talk about it and know about it. And so one of my daughters, when she was young, she was more introverted. I've got like an introverted daughter and an extroverted daughter. And my introverted daughter went quite silent and wouldn't talk much. When she was around 9, after we escaped, I didn't feel safe being ground floor of anything. So we'd moved into an apartment and we were on the first floor, and she wanted to jump out because she was being forced to go to see him. So she, was quite depressed at a young age and felt quite helpless, and I couldn't protect her. It didn't matter how much I wanted to. Whereas my other daughter, I always explain it as it was like she saw her father and she saw me, and she thought, no way do I want to be like Mum on the receiving end of all of that. And so her only option was to be like Dad. And it was a real shock after I escaped to have this realisation that, oh, my God, I've escaped it in one form, but actually I can't escape it in this form. And it's incredible because she was so little when I escaped, but she was very explosive, very intense through her whole childhood. It was really tough going for my other daughter and for myself. And I just kept doing, this is another book that's in the works, and it's part of it's a module in the site as well to help women if they've got children too. There's so much in the site. If you don't need that module, there's enough for you to play around with and use. And so I did all of these different things because I think I was a born therapist even before I became a therapist. And so I did a lot of therapeutic things with both my daughters to help them communicate, be with what was going on and get support. And so it helped me get through it all, even if it didn't look like it was helping my daughter. And I can remember my doctor saying to me, don't worry, even if you think nothing's been working, you will see it will. And when she was an adult and she could make her own choices, things started to change. She had access to a bit more power and she could acknowledge a bit more. And the really funny thing is when she became a mother, even though she was so oppositional through her whole childhood, when she became a mother, she has parented so like me. It just cracks me up.
You made a huge impact on her, and that is true. And I've thought about that in my own life. And I was a very wild, kind of fiery child growing up as well. And my parents, all they did, it was just a constant, we had lots of arguments, and I was always in trouble, but they constantly showed me love and always made sure that I knew I was loved. And so no matter how much fire and energy I had growing up and getting in trouble, once I hit about 18, 19, I really just completely calmed down. It was like everything that they taught me had come back to me. And like you said, you do learn and you do listen and you are taking that in and you do pick up those values and that love and everything else that your parents, are giving you, even if you don't acknowledge it at that point while you're going through it. And I don't know if you're aware of, there's, I work also a lot with in the energy, because my wounding was not just at conception, but in the belly of my mother. That was my wounding. And so I've work a lot with kind of that and the energy that the baby takes on when they're in the womb and how that affects them throughout their life, until they heal it. And it sounds to me, and you may already know this, and I'm just like thinking, because I just find this so fascinating, that some children, they take it and it's more of a water and they go really inward and they're more this child who's builds this wall and is kind of like shy and scared and protected and doesn't want to move forward. Whereas the other child could experience the same energy inside the womb, but they're fiery and they're the fighter and they're really more aggressive and go-getter. But it all comes back to kind of the same thing, but how they react to that inside the womb and then reacting to that in the world. Do you know anything about that?
It's fascinating. And particularly, I write a bit about this in my book, how the mother is not only giving to the unborn child to help them develop and grow, but the child actually gives things, I don't know if you've ever read that, to the mother that helps her health in the future.
Yes.
So it's almost, there's this incredible connection between the mother and child. I just have to clarify one thing about my two daughters. My eldest daughter didn't experience that in the womb because that's not her father.
Okay.
So they had two different fathers. But I've got to say, when I was with my eldest daughter's father, if I think about what she would have been with in the womb, he freaked out when I got pregnant, even though we'd both agreed that we'd see, if this was the right time, if the universe brought us a baby. And but when it actually happened, he freaked out. He'd come also from in different childhood from mine, but very, very violent.
Okay.
And so he freaked out that he was going to turn into his father, and he shut down and he quit work and he just isolated himself from me. And so I went through pregnancy, even though he was there, he wasn't really there. So I was very alone. So on that level, she would have picked up a lot of grief, I think, and a lot of abandonment.
Yeah.
But I felt this incredible connection to her and used to talk to her all the time. And I actually remembered coming out of the birth canal of my mother. So,
that's fascinating.
So I used to tell her, to prepare her for being born, I'd say, it's just like a big slippery ride. You'll love it.
Oh, I love that. I love that you remember that. I know so many children, they do have that memory up until like a certain age, and you've kept yours. How is that? Did your mother ask you about that when you were young, or is just this something inside of you that's just never lost that?
I've always been attuned to energy, and so I don't know why. I've always, I've seen things, I've sensed things, I've known things, and so there's always been some part of me that can know more than the conscious rational mind from a young age. And one of the gifts from my mother was she was born in Poland 1939 when the war broke out, and I come from both my parents a Jewish background. When she came to Australia, she was very traumatised from the war because it had been through her developmental years, and she rejected religion and went searching for spirituality and what to believe in. And so when I was growing up, even though she couldn't be attuned to me because so much trauma, she was very dissociated, and so she couldn't attune to me, but she could share her spiritual ideas with me and my sisters. And so I was exposed to a lot of understandings about energy and what a lot of people would say is being psychic. And she, because I used to say to her, oh, I can see this, or what does that mean, Mum? She would say to me, oh, you're psychic. And so she believed in me in that area. So I think that helped it to stay because it wasn't ridiculed. She took it seriously.
Yeah, I think I remember having feelings and seeing things, having that, but growing up in a family that didn't believe in that. And so it shut me down because, of course, you're not being believed. And it becomes scary for a child when you're not believed, but you know that there's other things in the world. Yeah. So that's wonderful that your mother was so supportive of that. Yeah,
it was one of the blessings. Whereas my dad is very, very religious. So they were polar opposites of being Jewish and being spiritual. But I wanted to add something with what you were saying about my children, and because we're talking about love. And I can remember this light bulb moment one day when I was with my eldest daughter and we were having a difficult conversation, and it was like we were speaking two different languages and we couldn't connect. And we kept trying and trying. Neither of us walked away. She was about 17, I think then, 16 or 17. And we're trying and trying, and it was just very distressing. But we didn't give up. And at some point, I don't know what happened, but we connected. And when we hugged and cried and connected and were attuned back to each other again, it was like this light bulb moment for me, because both my parents had not been attuned to me, warm or loving, and they never knew anything about me. And so there was this clarity in that moment with my daughter that this is what love is. It's not giving up and keep holding the receptiveness to reattune with each other, because we're all going to misattune with each other. That just is inevitable in life. But as long as we reattune with each other, then everything will be okay. I think human beings are so forgiving if someone is willing to reattune genuinely.
Yeah.
We can accept so much if there is that, and that I'm really grateful for that whole experience with her, because it helped give me clarity, because my parents never attuned to me.
Yeah.
It was always revolving around them.
Yeah, thank you. I just felt it.
Yeah, it was really precious. And when I studied as a psychotherapist, then I understood theoretically about attunement, misattunement, reattunement. And that's what we want to develop our emotional muscle so we can tolerate the misattunement. But trauma happens when that misattunement happens too soon, or it's too big, it's too much. And so we need our whether it's our parent or our friend or our lover to reattune, and we need to have that emotional muscle to be able to do that too.
Yeah.
And if we can have that mind-body skills to have that emotional muscle to reattune, then we're all going to be okay. It's because we shut down, we get scared to talk about what's really going on because we fear rejection.
Yes.
We fear offending people.
Yeah. And communication is, and then we come back to the throat, communication is so key.
Yeah.
To that attunement, to being able to, no fear of rejection, just having so much self-love that you trust, in yourself and your truth, and just being able to open up and because
no matter how much we have this connection to our energy, we also have a physical body, and the physical body is connected to our stress responses, which creates those involuntary stress patterns. And I don't know if you know, but when we're stressed, our frontal cortex shuts down, so we don't have that ease to think about our feelings and feel about our thinking and speak our voice. But also it hits on that tribal survival need, that we need the tribe to survive. So we have this terror, I think, this primal terror that if I speak up, that's separating, it's not connecting to the other person. And that hits on a terror that we could not survive in the tribe, even though nowadays we can easily survive no matter what. And also, I don't know if you know about the female stress response. Do you know?
Share it with us.
Yeah.
This is fascinating.
Do you know about the fight, flight, freeze response?
Yes.
But that was tested on men, and it was just assumed that women were the same. And a number of years ago, a woman thought, well, I need to check this out. I'm curious, what's our system like under stress? And she found we also have the fight, flight, freeze response. But we have an additional one that gets activated by our oxytocin and our estrogen levels. And she calls it the tending instinct. And the phrase she uses is tend, mend and befriend. So it's all about keeping the group together, looking after. And so when we do that, I think we can lose our voice because we're so busy thinking of the group. And it's important to understand the push and pulls in our own system, because if we don't have that clarity, then they keep shaping and directing and limiting our choices. But we can work with it easily, not through willpower.
Yeah.
When we know how to work with the mind-body system and the brain.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Thank you for sharing that. I didn't know that third one. I actually lived most of my life in the fight or flight, but on the side of fight. I didn't run very often. I was the fighter. But yeah, it's having that realization and knowing that I needed to just surrender and soften into. And instead of fighting was huge in my own healing. Yeah. And I didn't know about that third one, which was the tend and mend. And that's, I can really picture that. I can feel that. And I think that's really important for us to be aware of.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I just want to honour and acknowledge the work you've done in your journey, because clearly even though you've probably retained those beautiful qualities of the wild self, which is wonderful and we need it. It's vital. But that clearly you have that connection to your energy and your softness and feelings now.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It was a big journey. It was a big journey, but I do, and I work a lot with that wild energy, but from a healed place, with healing and really reconnecting with that primal energy for empowerment and embodiment. But yeah, it was a long journey for me to, and it's never finished. I mean, we're always on our journey. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for that compliment.
My pleasure. I use fairy tales in some of my work, and
I love stories.
We can relate to a fairy tale, and it's less threatening than hearing sometimes facts. And it just started organically when I was working one-on-one with women. And I started saying we've been taught to be like Little Red Riding Hood, and we've been taught to have our basket, and in the basket is kindness and compassion and understanding and forgiveness. And we're taught to go out in the world, and we've got all these beautiful goods. And like Little Red Riding Hood, we're often taught to take on something that's bigger than us to bear, like going through the woods to a little girl to help her sick grandmother. And we often grow up and we're not taught that there's wolves out there, and that the wolves don't follow the rules that we're taught, and the wolves take advantage of everything that we've got in our basket. So I am always encouraging women that, the woodcutter for me represents the instinct, because he pays attention to the little and he takes it seriously, whether it's the sound of crackling in the woods, and it could be like a tree coming down or a wolf prowling through the woods. He takes the little seriously. When he hears the grandmother's, not the grandmother, the wolf pretending to be the grandmother snoring, he senses something's not right, and he's willing to barge in. So he listens to his instincts. He's willing to make a mistake. And the third thing he does is he cuts the wolf open. He's willing to be with the messy to get to the good. And so what I talk about is Little Red Riding Hood goes out into the woods naive, because she doesn't have her fierceness and her instinct to protect her innocence. And so for me, when you talk about being wild, I think of the fierceness that we need to have in contact with our instinct. And when we can have access to that, we can protect our creative self, our innocent ourself that loves and holds wonder, for the world. And it's vital, that wild and fierce self.
Because there is innocence there, that we have within us that's been kind of abused, or, not listened to, or not protected in so many ways. And it's still there, and that's why for me, it's why we build up some walls and things, is because our innocence has been just beat, so many times. And so we've built these walls of protection. But it's coming back to that innocence in a way that we are fierce enough, to protect it. And yet, honor that innocence within us.
Because the innocence is where our creative self is.
Oh, that magical inner child.
And that's where discoveries and joy and newness can come about, when we can stay open.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. And I think I'm going to have to close this, but can you, is there anything else you'd like to share before we close?
Oh, yes. I don't know if we were talking earlier, and I don't know if you've got that, like my theory around love as to why we get caught in relationships.
Share that. Yeah. Share that with us.
Because when I journeyed with so many women, and in looking through my own journey about getting caught in a toxic or abusive relationships, and I didn't think that the reasons that people give made sense to me as to why we get caught. And there was that over-reliance on that left brain, and we can know so much more when we go beyond the left brain. So I thought, what's going on here? And the way I saw it is that there's a triangle, an upside-down triangle, and often our parents don't teach us how to be with someone that has a best face and a worst face. If someone just shows their best face and they're delightful and beautiful, we get clear messages, play with them, they're great, enjoy yourself. If someone's completely scary and nasty, we get clear messages, don't go near them, keep away. But our parents don't know how to teach us how to be with someone that's got a best and a worst face. And so what happens is at the bottom of the triangle, we're left with overwhelm, confusion, and we don't know what to do. So often we minimize the worst self and focus on the best self. And often that comes about because our parents don't have the emotional muscle to bear being with their own worst self. They don't want to acknowledge it. They want you to see them as their best. And what happens as a child, because we haven't developed mentally in our brain, you know, it's not till we're in our 20s that our brain finishes developing. So we can't process it in the way we might later in life. And plus for survival, we're dependent on our parents. So when our parent lets us down and they can't own their worst face, and we have a natural instinctual response of being angry, because if a child feels safe, they'll say, I hate you, I don't like you, yeah? But if they know on some level, if they pick up that they could get punished or rejected or shamed for showing that instinctual response, what happens is it gets buried in the system and they have to show the parent the love and the acceptance. And what happens is that anger often gets turned in on themselves, and you can't trust your own reality, and you must be the bad one because they have to be good because you need them for survival. And so we grow up with this distortion often, I think, because our parents can't own and model for us how to be with the best and the worst face in relationship. And so we go out into the world disconnected from trusting our reality and our experience, and we go out over-identifying with people's best face and minimising the worst face. And as I mentioned to you when we first chatted, that every woman I've asked, did you have warning signs at the beginning of being in a toxic or abusive relationship? Every single woman, including myself, says yes. But there's this gap of not responding. And I truly think it's because of this triangle that when we're confused and overwhelmed, we shut down. We don't know what to do because we haven't been modelled and taught how to be with things that are opposite each other. And that's part of what I teach in my online program and my workshops. But if you think of an upside down triangle, and I do a workshop on this, and so there's lots of layers to go into the depth of it. But fundamentally, when we're growing up, we get taught that when someone's nice, hang out with them, they're great, yeah? And when someone's nasty, we're given clear messages, keep away from them. And there's no confusion about that, yeah? But we get confusion, and that's the bottom part of the triangle. We get confusion when someone has a best face and a worst face, which is the two other points of the triangle, because we don't get taught adequately how to respond to someone when they've got a best face and a worst face. And so what we tend to do is minimise the worst face, make excuses for it, and try and focus on the best face. But that's not being with the whole, and it's because of that confusion and overwhelm that disconnects us at the bottom of the triangle. So I do a whole workshop about how to, and it will be one of my books, hopefully, that I'll get to this year, expanding that theory, because I think that's an important life skill that we get caught in, and I think that's the primary reason.
That's fascinating.
Thank you.
So I didn't mean to cut you off. Please continue.
No, that's all right. That's all right. Yeah, so that, for me, when I've spoken about that, people relate to it. It's like, yeah, we didn't get taught that. And very often we've had parents that couldn't own their own worst face. And so we learn growing up to ignore it and act like it's not there. So it stops us from listening to those warning signs that we all get. And I think that can, so the other area as well as love that I'm very passionate about is our connection to our instinct, which is connected to our body and our unconscious.
Yeah.
And I think we live in a society that values the left brain so much that it denies all the knowledge. And if we be with the unconscious and trust it when it's subtle and not concrete, it's always right.
Yeah.
So we get confused because, you know, one of the things with love is because we've been taught we've got to love our parents even if they don't own their worst face, we tend to get like these chemical, you know, this chemical lighting up in our brain about what love is, but it's not accurate. It's that combination of I love you, you're actually unsafe for me in some way for my well-being. And so very often it lights up for someone that's unsafe for our well-being because originally we interpreted that as love because we weren't allowed to not love our parents. We weren't allowed to not like them. And so we can tend to think, oh, this is love when we get all of these physiological responses going on. But it could be a mixture of things going on, but we're not good at discerning what that is. So I work a lot with helping women be with their instinct, their body and their unconscious.
Yeah, I love that. You said something about we don't always pick up on those, you know, those subtle. We ignore those subtle hints and those subtle clues. And something that I found, and I'm sure you found the same thing, is that they don't even know what that feels like. Like I've had clients and I've said, okay, just feel my energy from here and feel if you can even feel me coming into your energy space, if you can, you know, feel that shift, and they can't. So just getting to know your body and energy and how it feels when someone comes into your space. And if you feel like you're okay with that or not. And when to say stop. No.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's huge.
Oh, I'm getting goosebumps because this so resonates with what I say and how disconnected we are from our deep knowings and our energy system. And I actually, when I'm working face to face with women, I actually do a group exercise when I'm working, or I can went one-on-one or with a group, where we pair up and one of the women stands at a distance away, and you just take your attention to your body and your energy and just feel and sense how it is. And then when I say start, the other woman starts to slowly walk towards her. And as soon as that woman that's been focusing on her body and energy notices a shift, doesn't matter what kind of shift, any shift of change, then and there's a specific action with your hands, your voice and your legs. So you're linking up your instinct, your voice and your whole system to go stop. So the opposite foot with the opposite hand as you say stop. The amount of women that end up that the person crashes into them because they're so disconnected from their own energy system, or they shut it down because they're so busy thinking, well, I don't have anything against this person, and they're so focused on the other person that they're not connected to themselves.
Yes.
So it's a wonderful exercise to do, and I play around with it. Like they take it in turns so they both get to experience both parts of it. But then we do it first with eyes open and then eyes closed, and then we do it even turning around, and you still do the whole motion with eyes open and then eyes closed, because you want to connect to your energy and your sensing system 360. Not just what's in front of you. We over-rely on our eyes, but we can go into thinking too much with what we see. So it's about bringing our attention back into our deep intelligence that's within our body.
That primal nature that we're born with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I do something similar to the exercise you just described, and I've noticed the same thing. Yeah, and it's quite amazing when they actually begin to feel their own energy and learn how to work with that.
Yeah, and often the women, they'll do the hand motion and they won't speak. They're disconnected from having that voice that affects somebody else. So important.
The throat chakra is something that so many of us have kind of shut down, or not shut down, but kind of need to regain our power there.
Through my childhood and early adult years, I had constant sore throats all the time till I had therapy, and then none since.
Wow. Yeah. The power of the body to tell you what is going on.
Oh, it's incredible. We've got this wonderful communication that's constantly happening via our body, because the body holds the unconscious. And when we just connect to the left brain, we miss out on being with the whole picture and all of the information. So it's wonderful.
God, I love this conversation. Yes, last night I actually, my ears started hurting, and there's been a lot of shifts in my life recently, and my ears started hurting. I'm like, okay, well, what is it that's going on that I'm not, I think it's like, what am I not hearing? What do I not want to hear? And just kind of sitting with that, and just listening, to myself and to my body, and allowing myself to be in that space and honor what is actually happening and why I'm feeling that. So it's quite powerful when you know yourself, and you have that such depth of awareness, like self-awareness.
And for me, what goes with that is our capacity to say stop to the world and create that space for that attunement with ourselves. Because with social media and the fast pace of our world nowadays, we don't have much of that communion with the self, which is so vital. And I think what goes along with that is that we need to develop our emotional muscle to be able to be with something outside of our comfort zone, or a new thought, a new feeling. We tend to do a lot of repetition of thoughts and choices, and it's not I think that's why we have a lot of anxiety and a lot of depression in our society nowadays, because we're not taking that space to attune to our deep self. It's vital for creative living, because we're creative beings.
And we're so cut off from that in our left brain kind of daily life, where we're so cut off from that creativity. And I'm really grateful for that time that I've had here in France, because it's really allowed me that space to really spend so much more time with myself, and it's just been amazing. Because the American life, and I'm sure Australia is quite the same, it's very fast paced. And it's a constant go, and you could work 60 hours a week, and it's just, you never have that space. And coming here and being able to just breathe was like, wow, this is what it's supposed to feel like.
Yes. That's the wonderful thing when you either travel for holidays or travel and live outside of where you've grown up, because we're outside of state-dependent memory. And so we've got so much more choices about how we can be, and we're not in that repetition. There's so many more possibilities, which is just wonderful.
Wow, thank you. Yes, that was so important. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for bringing that back up, because for anybody who we had a great conversation before. So some of this is what we were talking about before we jumped on to record this. And it was so important that I really wanted to go back and do that, but I was trying to think of, we've had this amazing conversation of what that was. And you just, again, like I could talk to you for hours. There is something that you brought up that just dawned on me, just a realization that I was probably 13 and probably at my worst with my parents as far as like arguing and wanting to do my own thing and very independent. And that was always me and my father who would argue, because we were similar in some ways and both strong and butting heads. And there was one time in my life that I screamed at him and I yelled, "I hate you right now." And I felt so horrible, for saying that to him. And he blew up, and then he, stepped back, and we just kind of, we never really got that angry again at each other. But with you saying that, I must have felt safe. I must have felt that I knew that I was loved and that he wasn't going to leave me for me to be able to say that. And it's true. And he didn't, as much as we fought, like he was always there and he still is. So that's just, wow. I always felt so bad for saying that, but now I'm like, okay, well, I must have felt loved.
This is one of the things our parents need to do developmentally, allow us to experience their good and their bad and allow us to feel it without, as I said, without shame, rejection or punishment or the parent falling to pieces. And if a parent can do that, then we can go in the world and we can own the whole of how we feel about someone. And it's not catastrophic because we've all got a best face and a worst face. Like I celebrate when I hear my grandchildren say, they haven't for years now, but when they were really little, there was that, "I hate you." And it's like, yay, you can throw it and feel safe and I'm not going to punish you or reject you.
Wow.
And yeah, it's so important. It's like it's just another feeling. Yeah. We're so scared of feelings. It's not catastrophic. And that's what we need to get that feedback on, isn't it? Non-verbal as well as verbal. So you can feel whatever you feel. It's not catastrophic. It won't be bigger than our relationship. It won't destroy our relationship. That's what we all need to know, because so many people are walking on eggshells, too scared to feel because they're scared that the relationship won't be able to carry it.
Yeah. Wow.
And so we miss out on intimacy, a level of knowing ourselves and knowing another when we can't immerse into our feelings so deeply and be with what I know when I read Zorba the Greek years ago, the full catastrophe of life is like, immerse in all the feelings. They all give information and help us gain clarity.
Fascinating. Oh, this whole conversation. Thank you so much for sharing all this with me today, for jumping on this call and having this conversation. I love starting my day off like this.
I love ending my day like this. This has been wonderful. I've really enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So how can someone get a hold of you? How can they find you?
Okay, so they can go to my website, AnitaBentata.com, AnitaBentata.com, and there you can email me any questions. You can have a look at my books. I've got some products. There's the membership site and also some new products coming soon, some T-shirts with some of my sayings and cups and bags and things. So keep a lookout for that coming soon. I'm also on Facebook under The Wolf in a Suit, which is the name of my first book.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And I've also got another Facebook page, Activating Artemis. That's my business name, because Artemis is the Greek goddess who's she unto herself, and she's the protector of the vulnerable and children, and she was capable and fierce. She didn't, she could trust her own capabilities. I'm also on Instagram under my name, Anita Bentata. You can also find me on Twitter or LinkedIn. Talk to me. I'd love to hear your questions and continue this important conversation about the art of love. It's what we're all about, isn't it?
Yes, yes. coming back to love.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, everyone, for joining us for the Art of Love. And I look forward to connecting with you again next Wednesday. May we go out into the rest of this week embodying more love, love for ourselves, love for others, and love for Pachamama, Mother Earth. So love to each and every one of you, and see you next week.